Hmm. Shoot.
Okay. Okay, guys. Let's not hurt each other. Are you through now? Are you supposed to play with cigarettes? No, I don't think so. Is it over? I had it. Is it over? No, I had it.
No, I had it. I'm assuming, since you're attending a session called Professionalism, that maybe you have seen these types of behaviors in your kitchen before. Or look, if we're being honest, and I'm being honest, we've all exhibited adult behavior similar to that before, have we not? I think we have. So I'm glad you decided to attend. I'll come back to that kid in just a minute, but I just wanted to tell you a bit about me. So I am Tammy West. I live just north of Nashville, Tennessee. My husband and I have a blended family of 8 children and I think 9, maybe 10 grandchildren. I taught high school for 10 years, had a relationship with my kitchen staff. Then I left to be a professional speaker and author. But during the 15 years that I've done that, I have worked in the child nutrition industry for a couple of equipment companies. In fact, I'm doing that right now with Preferred Packaging. So I feel your pain. I hope you know that I love and respect everything you do. I've probably spoken to nearly 200 at this point, child nutrition groups at the school, district, state, and national level. And I mean it wholeheartedly when I say I respect everything that you do so much, and I'm so excited to be with you. So you're at a session today called Professionalism, and I wanted to open with this child. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this child, and we'll be going back and forth just from screen, no screen, so we can hang together. So you may have figured it out already that that is my child. That is my oldest biological child, Jamie, or James, because you know he's adult now, and he's 33, I think. At some point you stop counting. So we've all, as children, exhibited that behavior, but the goal is to learn, to grow. I think I provided some mentoring, some parenting along with his teachers. Now listen, I wasn't perfect. My 3 biological children have plenty of complaints, but I did try. And so he learned you can't do that. That's not a professional or acceptable behavior. And he did pretty good. He worked for Facebook for a number of years. This is a picture of us when we lived in California in separate places. He ran the Disney Marathon. He's worked in politics. He's done pretty well. So that was the first story I wanted to share with you. And I want to share one more, 2 more really, but before we actually break into content. This is the story of 2 sisters. Now, these 2 sisters were about 8 and 9 years old in this picture. They're about a year apart. They grew up in a difficult home, didn't get coaching, teaching, parenting, not pretty much anything. As adults, these 2 sisters took different paths. The older sister on the right, the blonde, when confronted with difficult situations, with challenges, her default style was aggressive, anger, in your face. The younger sister, the brunette on the left, took the totally opposite path. When confronted with difficult situations, she would withdraw, become anxious, become fearful. Now, we all have these things in our past, right? Now, you may have already figured out that the girl on the left, the small one, the brunette, is me. My sister agreed to let me share her story with you. And listen, there are consequences. She lost a job in a school because of this unprofessionalism, and I quit school. As an adult, I was student teaching. I received a poor evaluation. I did not know how to handle this. I quit. I was in the mental hospital in 1995 with anxiety and depression and panic attacks. But I tell you this just to say, we got to learn, right? It's not fair if we allow unprofessional behavior in our schools, whoever we're leading, and we don't mentor and teach and coach and do all that we can, and then wind up letting this person go or writing this person up. I didn't know how to behave. It took me a while to learn that. And so what happens as an adult, this is the story that will take us right into, well, we'll do our agenda and then we'll do our points, but this is a story that will lead to that. So as an adult, we're not quite ready for that. I left teaching in 2005. I started working with a seminar company. And what this meant was I would fly into a city, meet a woman typically that I hadn't met before. We would jump in the car, we would go to a hotel, we would do a public seminar in the conference room the next day. We would, from like 7 to 4. Then we would get back in the car, load up, go to the next city and do it again. Now, the only time we weren't together is when we had our sleep rooms. Other than that, we were together. So do you see how that could be potential for problems? So this particular day, what we did was we had an opening session, and then we explained, it was a women's conference. We explained to the women what our sessions were. Hers was assertiveness and mine was going to be emotions. And then they could choose wherever they wanted to go. So I'm getting ready to start, and I noticed that my room is very full. And so like 100 women, and we had about 100 women there. The next thing I knew, she came walking in with a chair and says, I'll just join you. No one came to my room. So she did. Now, there came a point in my emotion session where I said to the room, I said just like this, I need someone to engage me in a difficult conversation. Who will do it? No one raises their hand, because what I'm really saying is I need you to be mean to me. But her hand went straight up. So I called on her. I had my hair up that day. And she says to me in front of 100 people, yeah, what's up with your hair? Now, if you're a man, this may not affect you as much. But remember, I used to operate out of fear and anxiety and withdrawal. And I have 100 women in an emotions class waiting to see what I will say. I thank God that I had been studying. It had been about a year since I left teaching, and I'd been studying all these resources about professionalism and leadership, and I'd been studying all this. So I paused and I searched my brain and I found a phrase and I said, what would make you ask me something like that? And I'm like, but we weren't done. Because the next thing she said was, well, I don't know, turn around. I think everything about you looks unprofessional. Y'all, it was like a tennis match. They were like, they could tell that it really wasn't set up. So I paused, searched my brain, found a phrase, and I said, I do want to hear what you have to say, but not the pot shots. I was kind of proud of myself that day, because that was the day that I knew that I could actually learn this material and not react in fear or run away. Or I knew that this was, I was on my path now to having professional behavior and to being able to deal with other people. And I want that for you. Now, I will say that was my story. That was not her side of the story. I hope that you realize that there are multiple sides of the story. And I know that I wasn't perfect, but I don't want to share that part with you because you might not like me. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't do anything awful, but I definitely contributed. And I had to figure that out for myself as well. But that's for another session. So here's what we have: the short time for me to change your life in like the next 20 minutes. So we are going to, oh, come on. We're going to share the screen. So here are the factors that we're going to talk about today, or the 3 things. The first one is to identify unknown or be aware of unknown factors that affect professional self-image. The second is to learn the impact of this field called discursive psychology. It's not complicated, don't worry, but it's going to open up your eyes. And the final thing is I want to give you some tools to enhance professionalism. So that's where we're going. What is professionalism? Okay, before we get into number one, listen, I think that you have to define that for yourself in your school. But what I did do is get on the SNA site and I looked at their code of ethics and I pulled out these 9 words. And I feel like these are great words when you think about being professional in the environment at which you work with one another, with teachers, with staff, with children, all of that. Listen to these words: respectful, honesty, fairness, impartiality, kind, concern, responsiveness, courtesy, respect, and integrity. Now, I will say one thing about that is those words can be kind of vague. Respect might mean one thing to somebody and one thing to another person. So, what I want to encourage you to do is make a professionalism plan where you take those words or other words and you write out behaviors that indicate that those goals are being met. So you can't, it's not good enough just to say you got to be more respectful, because people won't really know what that means. You got to give them some behaviors, which is why we're talking today mainly about language. So the fun of working at home. All right, so here we go. Secret number 1: become aware of unknown factors that impact a professional self-image. See, it starts on the inside. It's the self-image that people have of themselves that then impacts the way that they behave in the workplace. I'm not asking you to figure out what those factors are. I'm not asking you to provide therapy, although I think that you probably do to some degree. I'm not asking you to say that it's an excuse. I'm just asking you to be aware, just like those 2 sisters, that every person who walks into your kitchen, staff, principals, administrators, teachers, vendors, the health department, kids, everybody comes in there with unknown factors. And what that helps you do is it prevents you from making assumptions. Okay, the way that people talk reflects that self-image. And I want you to remember that, because that's going to take us to our second point. Research has shown how talk reveals our social characteristics, class, gender, ethnicity, all of that. So the first one is pretty short, but it's just encouraging you to become aware that there are hidden things that affect the way that people interact with one another and how professional that they are. All right. So this is going to take us to point number 2, but I'm going to ask you a question. I would like for you to put it in the chat box. If you see a clock and it says 12:47, what time do you say that it is? Okay, now I have already some that people have sent me, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you what those are, but put yours in the chat box. 12:50, 12:45, that's been said before, almost 1. Okay, so why am I asking you about the time? Well, let me go on to define discursive psychology for you, and then I think it will make sense. So secret number 2 is discover the impact of critical discursive psychology on identities. So here's the definition. In contrast to traditional psychologists, discursive psychologists regard conversations as indicators not of the mental processes or belief systems, but instead of actions, social actions. Okay, so what I'm saying is this can go a bunch of different ways. Let's say that you're getting ready to serve and everybody's running behind. And let's say your serve time is 1. 1 is a weird serving time, but unless you're in high school and you have different, but let's just say it's 1, okay? So if you are trying to get everybody to move quicker, you're probably going to say it's 10-1. It's almost 1. It's 12:50. You're not going to say it's 12:47, probably, unless you're one of those people who says exactly what's on the clock. Let's say you're the person running late. Let's say you call, you're having a conversation, and you say, it's not even 1:45 yet, okay? Or it's just a little past 1:45, or it's 12:45, or it's just, you're going to round down. So depending on what your action that you're taking is, for the first one, the action of saying it's 12:50, 10-1, almost 1 is to get people to move faster. The action, if you round down, is to try to make the situation not seem as dire as it is. Now, that doesn't have anything to do with identities, but I use this example because we do it all the time. We do it with pricing. Like if you buy something that's $19.99 and you think it's a great deal, you're probably going to say it was only $19.99. But if you if you think that it was too expensive, but you bought it anyway, or you didn't, no, sorry, you think it's too expensive, so you didn't buy it, and you're telling the story, you're going to say it was $20 plus tax. So we do things with language. We show things with language. It's not always an indicator of what we think or what we believe. So let's go back to this critical discursive psychology. What I'm saying here is that the way somebody talks shows what their identity is. Now, I'm defining identity here as who people are to each other. Identity can mean in many different things. An identity can be, I'm a woman, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a speaker, I'm a Christian. All those things are identifying words. But the way that I'm using identity here is who we are to each other, because remember, we're interacting with each other. We wouldn't need to be professional in the workplace if we were all by ourselves. So what does that look like? Here's the example. You tell a coworker that you went to bed early the night before because you were exhausted. Now, they're going to say something back to you. And I want you to, with me, put it in the chat box, whatever, tell me what that person's identity to you is. Now, let me do the first one, that'll make sense. If that person says, must be nice, then you might remember those words we had at the beginning from the SNA, responsive, kind, courteous, all those things. But if somebody says back to you, must be nice, then the identity that you might be perceiving from them is that they're not caring, they're not concerned, right? Let's do another one. Oh gosh, I hope everything is okay. Then that might show an identity. See, they're speaking, and then you get an identity of who they are. So I hope everything is okay. Then you might see them as kind and concerned. Oh gosh, what's happening in your world? Then you might see them as curious, as interested. Okay, that's another one. Or I could never do that with a newborn. So maybe their identity is busy, overloaded. See, does that make sense? When we talk to one another, we tell people who we are. Now, if you've been to, this is a virtual conference, but when you go to live conferences, you've probably seen badges that people wear. They oftentimes have on like a name, who they are, and then sometimes they have ribbons. And those ribbons say things like, I met this woman, this was at the Texas School of Nutrition Conference a couple of years ago. And this woman had on these ribbons, first timer, delegate, believe, here to serve, no whining, be happy. And look at how happy she is, they're awesome. But then I found out that there are oftentimes at conferences ribbon stations. And so some of those ribbons that she had on were given to her. But some of them, she went to a ribbon station and bought them for $1. It's like a fundraiser. Okay, let me show them to you again. So I thought that was awesome, right? I mean, she goes, so they probably gave her delegate and first timer, but she probably bought believe and here to serve and no whining. Isn't that awesome? So then I started paying attention to the ribbons. Unfortunately, some of them did not make me very happy. And I'm a big old buzzkill when it comes to some of this. Workaholic, OCD, and stressed. Okay, let me come back to you face to face. And I'm so sorry about I'm trying to keep out of the sun right there. It's changed. Does it bother you that they paid $1 to take on an identity of OCD or stressed? Now let's think about how professional that is in your school. If somebody has an identity, look, an OCD is not a funny thing, right? I mean, that's a serious thing. But I think what they're trying to say, and I get it, it's funny, you're like, people who say they're OCD typically mean they're committed and they work hard. But if somebody is taking on that identity and they're paying for it like that, the behaviors that often come out are things like, no, I don't have time to talk. I'm stressed. I'm a workaholic. I'm OCD. It also indicates nobody else works as hard as me. That does not bring teams together. That does not indicate a sense of professionalism. So what I want to encourage you to do here is, sorry, I wasn't ready to share yet. Help the people, your staff, come up with identities that they would like. In the description, I said some people see themselves as confident and, assertive, but maybe that's not confident and assertive. Maybe the behaviors they're exhibiting are actually aggressive, or maybe somebody sees themselves as being kind and a team player, but really they're not they're withdrawing, and therefore they're not seen as being kind and caring. They're seen as being passive and really not interested. So it'll be a very interesting exercise for you to have your staff write down what identities they would like to have with the people they work with teachers, administrators, with you, with the kids. And then you can look at how to create that identity using words. I sure hope that makes sense to you. And I have resources that can help. So stay in touch with me if that's something I can help you with. The final point is where we actually talk a little bit about the words. So what we've talked about first is their underlying reasons for poor self-image and therefore poor behavior that's not professional. So I want you to recognize that. It helps your mind process better. The second thing is to look at the impact of the way we talk that creates our identities, and what identity do we want? And the third thing is, well, let's create that identity of professionalism in whatever words you want to use there, by teaching you conversational tools. Now, this book that's on the screen, Power Phrases, is the book that I was studying before I had that interaction with that woman. This is the book I was studying. And one of the things that I learned from Merrill Runyon, oops, apologies, we're going a little ahead. I want to just talk just a moment of something that some of you may have mislearned, or I don't want you to mislearn it in the future. There's a model of communication called the Moravian model. And what it says, and this is the way people teach it, they will say 93% of the message people get from you don't even come from your words. It comes from your body language and your tone of voice. Well, sort of. This guy, Al Moravian, who did this model, what he meant was, okay, if you're mad and you say, I'm not mad, he was talking about emotional conversations. So if you say, I'm not mad, well, people are going to believe 93%. They're going to believe your body language and your tone of voice, not the words. But he didn't study just everyday conversations. And I think the problem with that is we have forgotten to focus on words. Nobody teaches us words. So all of that is important. All of that is important, like body language and tone of voice. But what I want to do is talk about the power of words. In the few minutes that we have left, I want to give you 5 phrases that you can use with your staff to help with your professionalism with them. And then 5 phrases you can teach your staff to help their professionalism with you and with other people. Okay, now before though, let me show you a few phrases that are not professional that I have heard fairly often from staff and from directors. Here are some phrases that I've heard directors use about their staff. They don't care. They can't be trusted. They have control issues. They think they're the only ones who matter. Now listen, I get that there are staffing issues. Please don't think that I don't understand that, because I absolutely do. But again, talking this way creates an identity of maybe a lack of leadership. And I know that you're probably all great leaders. Here are phrases that I've heard from staff about others or about situations. Kids are awful. My manager supervisor didn't give a flip about us. I said flip, I changed the language. As you know, sometimes it can be colorful. He or she is up there in the Taj Mahal and we're down here doing all the work. Or it's not my job. These phrases that I want to share with you come from Merrill Runyon's book, Power Phrases. And by the way, she stopped writing and speaking several years ago. And when she did, I bought a lot of her books. So I'm going to start sending some out for free because I'm tired of storing them, and live speaking gigs have gone away for a while where I would sell them. So stay in touch if this will help you. These phrases, there's not very many that we can do in such a short time, but I believe these are the 5 that will help you the most. Phrases for you to use with staff. Number 1, if somebody's upset, I can see you feel strongly about this. This allows you to acknowledge without agreeing. Number 2, when they don't always feel appreciated, I appreciate blank because blank. Please be specific. They need to know specifically. It makes a person feel empowered. I appreciate you getting here every day on time, because that helps our team and our kitchen run smoothly and we can feed those kids. Number 3, why do you ask that? This is like what happened to me in front of the women. If somebody's challenging you, especially in front of other people, and that can happen, why do you ask that? Number 4, when you're trying to get people to not do the "it's not my job" thing, I have a project I think you'd be great at. It's outside of your usual area. Start it off that way. And number 5, I know students can be challenging. Let's find some ways to help. Now, I know you might be thinking, oh, those are simple, but I'm telling you, start using some of these powerful phrases because they will help. Now, here are some phrases when you do this staff development and you're talking about professionalism. These are some phrases you can teach them that will help them communicate better and be more professional. The first one, let's say a teacher comes in and is mad because they have to pay for tea. That never happens, does it? Yes, it does. I might feel that way if I was in your shoes. Again, acknowledging without agreeing. Number two, have you considered doing it this way? This might be for the person who thinks she's been there 40 years, he's been there 50 years, they want to do it the same way. Number three, when a kid is obnoxious, which I'm sure they never are, I wish I could give you 7 hot dogs, but I can't. Anger's not going to change that. They don't have any power over these kids. They don't have any authority. Give them some words to use. Number four, if they want to meet with you, if they're upset, tell them, here's a good way to approach me. There's an issue I'd like to discuss. Can we meet? And finally, when you give feedback, let them know, listen, if I give you feedback, how professional would it be for you to say to me, I'll consider what you told me and how I can apply it. And you can do the same thing with them if they're giving you some feedback. Okay, I'm going to consider that. Whew. It's a lot, and I have so much more. I wish that we had more time, but I hope that this has given you some things to think about. So I'm going to close with a quick story in a moment, but I did want you to see, I think you're going to get all of our information. I want to thank CSPro for doing this session. I hope I said that right. Sometimes you're talking fast. Karen's been wonderful to work with, so kudos to the whole team. It's been incredible for them to do this whole conference for you. So thank you for inviting me. This is my contact information. If you are interested in the Stress Club or you want to tune into my podcast, my website is there, my email is there, and my preferred packaging, that website is there as well. So let's close now.